Okay, let's get started. And welcome to the Game Design Book Club. We're joined today by Tastygraph, right here, and me, Bjorn, from a game dev company. You want to say something, Tasty? Maybe introduce yourself fast?
Yes, I'll do that. I am from Denmark, so I will sometimes have funny accents. I'm a 39-year-old game designer who has not yet properly released any games. And I recently started to learn programming. In my spare time, I am a school teacher and a care worker at a school. And I just got a frog in my throat. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here and supporting us.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
Exactly. And I'm Björn. I'm from Finland, so we both will have weird accents. It's like the Vikings meeting each other for the first time from different parts of the Viking kingdom. I've been game develop. I have a master's in game development. Had to read a lot of these books that we will cover for this for my education. And then since then, I've been developing games, and I've been working for over 10 years as a senior programmer. So programming is the easy part, but the design is, of course, it's always a challenge. And we'll start off the first episode with The Art of Game Design. This is a book by Jesse Schell, a book of lenses. We'll cover, we both have our copies. If you don't have a copy, a little bit of echo there, I think, Tasty. So if you don't have a copy...
It's probably because I'm not talking.
So if you don't have a copy, don't worry. You can still follow along. We'll try to cover the finer points of game design, or the book, I mean. And but if you want to get it, there's a link just below in a panel, and you can click it and get it from Amazon. And today we're going to cover chapter 1 and chapter 2, I guess.
Yep. And hopefully I got that sorted. I just turned my mic down a little bit. Hopefully you don't have an echo anymore.
Is there still an echo? Let's try. Echo? A bit, yeah, still.
Oh, snap. Worst case scenario, I'm going to have to turn your volume down a bit. Because I don't have a headset at the moment.
I don't have anything important to say, so don't worry.
Or at some point, I'm going to grab a pair of headphones, and then we shouldn't have any echo whatsoever.
Yeah, no worries. We'll figure it out if it becomes an issue. So should we get started?
Yep.
So let's see here. Let's flip to the first pages. So you read this before, right? Before we even started this. The book.
I did. I read it ages ago when I got it, and I think for me the cool part about this book was that how it's divided into all of these lenses, which are essentially questions that you need to ask yourself when you're making your game, like how am I going to present a specific experience to the player, or what kind of goals do I have? All of these things are lenses questions that are in the book. And in the first chapter, it basically explains what this game design thing is. And then in the second chapter, that's when the first lens comes. So we'll get back to that in a bit, I think.
Yeah. And actually, there's an app with just the lenses, I think, which is free. Let me check. I think I installed it so I can show it off on the stream. So you can download it. It's called As Much As. It's the same as the book. So The Art of Game Design. A book of a deck of lens. You can actually also buy them as a.
This stream is pay to win. I subbed 3 months and now I'm a guest on this stream.
Did you just get the? Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah.
Let me just scroll up and I'll find the link for the app while you're laughing.
Thanks, Stacy, for the sub. Now we need to dance together, I guess, or maybe we should.
I think we'll skip that part.
So here I can show you guys the app right here. So it has all the lenses, I guess, and you can play it, and you can use them. The book, though, it kind of explains how to view the lenses, so it is very valuable. So yeah, like Tasty said, the first chapter actually starts off with what is game design, and so let's see here. So I think it's important to understand, like, I think it's very common to not understand what is game design. Like, a lot of people think it's just making a game, which it kind of is. It's part of making a game. But what is actual game design? And here in the book, they say that, or Jesse says, game design is the act of deciding what a game should be. So it's basically, what he's trying to say there is, like, it's basically deciding the rules, doing all the decisions in the game. So should there be 50 guns, should be 10 guns, or whatever what type of game, depending on what type of game you're making, what kind of decisions you're making. And then it says, it actually points out a really good question that do I need some special equipment? What about programming? No, for game design, you don't need to know programming, nor brogramming. Nor do you need any special equipment. You don't even need a computer, because even, board games, card games, they're also games. And you can just start off with that. And a lot of the things actually happen in your brain. You're just doing these decisions. The thing is, it's not just one decision. When you're making a game, there's tens of thousands of decisions. And those decisions, they impact on what kind of game you make.
Yeah. And also another thing about the first chapter, it's also kind of meant as like an introduction to game dev or game design for new people, because it kind of has this mantra where it sort of makes you repeat the words "I am a game designer" with emphasis on different words. Like, it'll start by saying, you need to put emphasis on "I am a game designer," and then it makes you repeat it again, and it's like, "I am a game designer," to kind of reinforce that. And then "I am a game designer," and then you go to "I am a game designer." So it's kind of a pep talk chapter where it tells you that even though you don't feel like a game designer right now, you can be. You just need to do it. And you're seeing all of these people saying that, to be a game designer, you need to have designed a game. And that's kind of like as the book says, a catch-22, because how can I be a game designer if I have not done anything yet? And that's where I like this book. It kind of gives you some reference and pep talk to get your blood pumping for chapter 1, which is hard to read for me.
It was the hardest for you, was it?
It was. Of those two, it was, yes. Of chapter 1 and 2, chapter 2 was the hardest.
Yeah.
Sorry, chapter 1 was the hardest.
I also like in the first
terms of
chapter,
depth.
he also mentions here that that there is no like formal, like there's no periodic table, there's no forms, like there's nothing set. Everybody has their own approach, and it's because it's an art form, in my opinion. He doesn't say it that way, but well, it is the art of game design. It says there on the cover. So, and in art, it's hard to define hard rules.
Yeah.
There are rules, and there's good decisions and bad decisions, or but in the end, there's no there's tools you can use. That's about it. And this book, like the lenses, they are, like Tasty said, they're the tools. It's kind of how you see how you can look at your game or someone else's game. Let's see here. Going through here, what was there anything important in the first chapter we shouldn't skip? Well, the first thing is just actually what I found very interesting is that he says here that the most important skill of a game designer is to learn how to listen.
Yeah.
Which I think is very smart, because it is not only about listening to other people, it's about listening to your game, listening to yourself, listening to your teammates, listening to all parts of game design. And that's, I think, very smart how you put it, because it definitely is listening. It's and also the players, of course, the most important people to listen to. Like what I say, when I say, for example, when we do the feedback on Tuesdays, I say don't only look at or listen to what I say, look at also my expression, look at my like demeanor, because one and if I want it or not, there's things that it's hard to communicate with words, and you can maybe see it or listen to it through my body language.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he explains it pretty well, I think, by the way that he says, like, what kind of skills does a game designer need? And there's like a huge list. So I'm going to have to look at the book just to kind of remember them. But he's like, he goes through animation, anthropology, architecture, brainstorming, business, cinematography, communication, creative writing, economics, engineering, history, management, mathematics, music, psychology, public speaking, sound design, technical writing, and visual arts. And he even finishes that part off by saying, and there are many, many more. But really the most important part for the game designer is to be able to look at all these different aspects and listen and learn and observe, and particularly observe what goes on, since the primary task, according to this book, and I do agree, is for a game designer to create an experience. So our job is really to kind of capture the essence of what it is that we want to have the player experience. So yeah, it really goes into depth about talking about different kinds of way to listen on the following pages, and has some good examples. So like Bjorn said earlier, it really presents you with a bunch of these lenses that are tools to use. And then if you look at the tools, you look at the lenses, like the description of a lens, if it doesn't make immediate sense to you, then you can read through that particular chapter of the book, and it's kind of like a manual on how to use this lens. And that's where I find this book to be really good, which is why, for me, the later chapters are easier for me to read than the first chapter, because the first chapter doesn't have a lens.
Yeah, it
And
doesn't.
also, I'm not big on books.
No.
And hello, Games Plus James.
Exactly.
Welcome to the
Sup,
book
James?
club.
Welcome. The thing is, like, even when you listed all those, like, games, history, management, mathematics, they're all useful. And even probably if you worked as a cleaner, that is, oh, you can't see it on the stream. There's a kitty. Anyway.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was wondering if you guys could see it, but yeah, there's a cat.
I can
She'd
see him,
want
but
to sleep on the chair.
I just cropped kitty out of the stream.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that you have to be an expert on all these fields, and you don't necessarily have to know anything about them, but each of these things will help you. And even, like I said, if you're a cleaner, there's things like if you make there's still things that you can bring in and can benefit, when you make a game. Because games is about creating experience and environments, and just living life even in general is very important for making games. Like, I think, like, traveling, seeing the world, meeting people, talking to people, all of those, like, if you just sit at home, your game might also become a bit one-dimensional, because, your experience is also limited. Subtale of Gamers, welcome. So that's basically the first chapter, just goes through this, what we just said. I am a game designer, I am game and a designer. At the end, actually, I marked here, there's a really good recommendation here. At the end, it says other reading to consider, right here. You can't read it on stream, I'm sorry. But one of his recommendations is Challenges for Game Designers by Brenda Brathwaite and Ian Schreiber. A magnificent collection of exercises for when you're ready to stretch your game design muscles. So that part, like, that book is super, super good, because there you go. Because once you read this book, this is excellent practice. You read it, Tasty?
I read some of it, and then I was like, I don't have any friends to test my games, and I never got back to it. But I enjoyed the parts that I did read, because the way that it works is that it discusses some theory, and then it gives you some, like, pen and paper style exercises that you can do, and I tried to use some of them on the students, on the kids at my job. They didn't quite get all of them, obviously, because I was a crappy game designer at the time. But I'm gonna be, in case we ever take up this book for the book club, then I'm definitely going to be rereading it.
Yeah. I also, by the way, if you ever need exercises that would work with kids, I have some like that being used, even like with kids to university level, which are kind of how to get people to think in a game design way. We should maybe do even a stream about that someday, but
Yeah, that would be cool. We
But
should
this-
probably make a note about it too, so we can remember.
let me write it up here on the wall. All right. Okay. So, no, I will definitely. It's definitely on the to do. But this book is super good because it gives you practical exercises, whereas the Art of Game Design has practical things, of course, but I don't think it doesn't have like design exercises. And these design exercises kind of help you kind of start thinking about different things.
Yeah, but I would say though that the second chapter kind of goes over stuff that you need to do. Like you need to exercise observation and you need to exercise introspection.
Yeah.
So they do talk about that, like where let me see if I can find it again. It does have like a couple of lines where it sort of says, how can you more easily observe yourself while you're playing a game to kind of capture the experience.
Yeah.
But it is it's very, very theoretical.
It is. We can move on to that. So the first chapter was in the beginning. There is a game designer, so covering what is the game designer, and the second we start with the designer creates an experience. So like we already discussed a bit. We said like making games is creating experiences. Here in the next chapter, he discusses it from many point of views. There is yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, about the designer that creates an experience, I think a lot of us, probably also among the viewers, are to some extent already doing this when you're making a game. Like, you may have played a game or you may have experienced something in your real life, and you kind of want to take this experience. You want to take the feeling of what was it like? It could have been a snowball fight like they're describing in the book, or in my case, it could have been like I like the hectic feeling of constantly having to switch directions and shoot at stuff or whatever. And then you kind of you take that core experience and try to turn it into a game with rules. But in order to do that, awesome! Thank you for the host, Krasenstein.
Thank you.
And welcome everyone. We're doing book club today.
Yeah, we're on chapter 2 of the Art of Game Design.
So yeah, what I was saying is that I'm pretty sure that all of the people in here that have made a game at some point may not necessarily have started out thinking, I want to make Call of Duty or I want to make Mario. They've probably had this sort of feeling where I liked jumping in Mario, so I want to make a game that's similar to that because I like the feeling of jumping or the feeling of bouncing on the walls or climbing, or I really liked how this and that felt when the princess was in another castle.
Yeah,
Lacoid
exactly.
says he has.
But I think also a lot of time, like taking from another industry, like movies and movie makers, I think people see them more easily, like they're trying to create experiences and entertainment. And games are not as easily seen as that for some reason. Maybe it's because it's a more complex experience. And the experience with one game might be different with every person because it's very personal. So I think but that's kind of what he's trying to say is like you're creating experience. And he's also here saying like the game is not the experience, like not the game itself. It's the secondary thing that comes out of the like what the people are feeling and experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah, and the experience is kind of it's a result of the interaction that you have with the, as the author calls it, the artifacts, the game pieces or the graphics on the screen or the joystick, the control methods or whatever. Those are the artifacts, and it's the interaction between the player and those things that are so different from every person, and even more so than books, because books and movies are generally linear. You know, you sit down, you watch it, and it's not like the person who made the movie arranged with the staff to come in and scare people with jump scares or anything. You know, it's like that's a linear experience. But when you're making a game, or if you're experiencing a game, you have different method or different options along the way. You know, it's like, do I want to go left? Do I want to go right? Some games don't give you that choice. They're still games because, you know, you can decide if you want to shoot the bad guy there or there. I'm talking to you, Call of Duty, with your linear stories.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
going back a couple of steps, when we listed all those like different skill sets that are useful to game design, I think, like you said now, like in Call of Duty, depending on what type of game you want to make or types of games you want to make, the skill set vary. Like you don't have to be if you're just making an experience like Call of Duty, it's very linear. A linear storytelling skills are fine, but if you want to make something more interactive, more complex, more maybe open world, the storytelling skills you have needs to be of a not necessarily different kind, but you need to have extra like skill points set into those slots to be able to do that.
James says, great. Now I need to go spend some money on game design, I guess. This particular one I highly recommend, because it will give you a lot of things that are kind of tested from a different perspective than just being a gamer. I come from a gamer background. I'm 39 years old. I've played games my entire life, and I've been like, yeah, I know loads of stuff about games. I found all the secrets in this and that game, and I learned all of these different things on how to do stuff, but I never really learned how to analyze a game. And the Book of Lenses can help you do that. There are loads of other books out there that can help you do that. There are educations on university that can help you do that. But this book is a really good start because it's not too academic, and it's also not too beginnery level. Like there are other books that we'll get into at a later point that are a little bit more beginner friendly, which can serve as a kind of extra toolkit. I don't know if we'll talk about them today, but keep in mind we have more stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of books. Some of them you can actually find already in the panel down below the stream, but some of them are quite academic. So please use your own judgment when picking them. Let's see here. So and that's the thing, like it talks a lot about, like he even goes into psychology, anthropology, and design, and takes from there like how they see the world and how that is correlating to game design. We probably won't go too deeply into that today, and that's maybe the more theoretical part. Very interesting, but it's a bit hard to discuss on the stream.
Yeah, for me it felt very, I'm not sure I'd say theoretical, but it felt very academic. I do understand why it's there in the book like that. The way it talks about 3 practical approaches to chasing rainbows, which is like 3 practical approaches to kind of figure out what is the experience here. But, the psychology part kind of talks about 2 different methods of psychology, which is, it's not really necessary for a beginner. I can't say that I use those tools myself. The anthropology, I think, is probably what that sort of study is probably what applies most to us, because we spend so much time watching live streamers. We spend time looking at people who are playing games, and that aspect is super important. as a game designer. Like, you can watch Bjorn every Tuesday do feedback on games and playing games, and you might have that sort of feeling where you're like, I'm much better at playing games than Bjorn. I got all of these things before him. But that's because you are observing, you're experiencing someone else who is currently having an experience. And it's kind of similar to, like, if you've ever tried, and this is also referenced in the book, but if you've ever tried typing and then looking at your hands while typing, all of a sudden you start typing slower. And I think he calls it the Heisenberg something, or the paralysis by analysis. It's basically when you're aware of something that you're doing, that's just, it doesn't work that well. And that's why we kind of need to take on the anthropology side of things by looking at other people play games and be a part of communities where other people play games and be a part of communities where other people design games. Look at what they do and look at the decisions that they make, and perhaps even why they make those decisions too.
Yeah. It all goes on then, and it kind of goes into then also like, is games truth or not? Like, because games are not reality. Like, when you look at anthropology or design and psychology, they're all limited by reality, and that's maybe where we can probably, as game designers, pick some parts of it, but also we're not limited by reality. We can think kind of into the extraordinary or push reality when we create experiences, just like in movies or any other like these creative fields. Like, for example, he uses here, there's a good, like Aristotle, when he was doing like research, his conclusions were that heavier objects fall faster than light ones do, which we know is not true today. Or that the seat of consciousness is in the heart. We know that we're not thinking from the heart. Also, that life arises by spontaneous generation, which is not true. But in a game design world, it could be. So in that way, we're also different we're not a science, but we could still use things from sciences, especially because when we're creating experiences, knowing about human psychology is super useful. We have a question here from Mr. J Gaming. Do you feel the risk of following a formula when looking at game design? The books I've read, at least, they usually are not so much a formula, and I think that's why he calls them lenses. It's just kind of different perspectives you can consider while designing a game. And
there's a part 2 to that question. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
Because he says, do you feel that there's a risk of following a formula when looking at game design in terms of lack of originality and not finding new and interesting things that players love? I think that's a good question. Sorry, go on.
No, you can answer. You can go. You go first, and I'll give my
answer. Okay, well, the thing about these formulas is that the formulas don't tell you what you should do necessarily that will make a hit game, but they tell you what you should do with your game, and that's where the lenses are really important. Imagine that these lenses are physically like a lens or like a spyglass or something. And an example of that, for instance, from the first lens, that chapter 2, the first lens says, the lens of existential experience. Use this lens, you stop thinking about your game and start thinking about the experience of the player. Ask yourself these questions. What experience do I want the player to have? What is essential to that experience? How can my game capture that experience? If there's a big difference between the experience you want to create and the one you are actually creating, your game needs to change. You need to clearly state the essential experience you desire and find as many ways as possible to instill this essence into your game. So it's kind of, I would say, idea agnostic. Like, it doesn't really matter what kind of game you're making. Obviously, not all lenses will apply to all games, but the majority of the lenses are agnostic. You can use them to kind of refine your game and make it universally better because these are things that the author and researchers have spent time figuring out, what makes a more appealing game overall. And Mr. J Gaming says, so it seems more about staying true to your goals as a designer and keeping grounded with them. Oh yeah, definitely. And staying true to your game, because essentially that's it. When you're making a game, you basically have some sort of experience that you want your players to experience. In Mr. J Gaming's case, his game, which is an infinite runner with 3 classes, probably more to come. The experience here is probably, from what I can tell, that you have to switch and make decisions while also jumping and navigating objects. So it's the fun and the pleasure of jumping that should be the main experience of the game. I don't know. Maybe he can answer that later.
Maybe it's also the speed. I mean, if
it's
fast paced. I mean, imagine running down a street, busy street or something, whatever you're dodging, in Infinite Runners. I think also these lenses, which I actually in the first couple of chapters he doesn't mention, but I think it's also useful to take these lenses and apply them to other people's games. And of course, like, we can go straight to, I guess, the first lens, which is the lens of emotion. People may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So the first lens says, to make sure the emotions you create are right ones, ask yourself these questions. What emotions would I like my player to experience? Why? What emotions are players, including me, having when they play now? And why? How can I bridge the gap between the emotions players are having and the emotion I'd like them to have? So these are, for example, the first lens. So looking at the emotions of the player. Actually, that's what I kind of try to say every time I review. Look at my emotions, because it's very hard for me to say, like, I feel like, I can say I'm happy, but that might not be good enough explanation of my emotion. And the same thing, when you see other people's game, if you watch a Let's Play, look at the people's emotions and say how big of a gap what did the maker of the game try to make, and what is the Let's Play player experiencing. So there might be a disconnect, or there might be no disconnect, and it's 1-to-1. And that way you kind of practice your design skills even without making anything. I actually like this one. There's this dialogue also that has dissecting your feelings. Is that he had this friend who was really bad at dissecting, and here's this dialogue. So me in this case is Jesse.
I'll be the friend. I'll be the friend.
So I'll be Jesse, I guess. So
okay.
Hey, what did you eat at the cafeteria today?
Pizza. It was really bad though.
Bad? What was bad about it?
I don't know. It was just, bad.
Well, do you mean it was cold, or too hard, too soggy, too bitter, too much sauce, not enough sauce, too cheesy? What was it all about?
I don't know. It was just bad.
Yeah. And I think this dialogue is really good, because I can sometimes see people. It's very hard to put things into words, but that's something you have to practice, right? What edition do we have? So I have the second edition, and Tasty has the first edition. So we're kind of covering both. And the third edition is coming out next year.
Yeah. And I'm not sure, but I actually think that it's in the third edition where they are going to be adding stuff about Kickstarter, about mobile development, and I think it was monetization, but I'm not entirely sure. I know that there's a trailer on YouTube. But that made me feel like maybe I should go from first edition to third edition of this book.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it might have useful things.
Yeah.
If you have an edition, most of it probably is it's still the same. Like, there are just a couple of chapters more. So if you're getting one now, I don't think you're gonna lose too much information.
No, but I do think that the lens was different, because it sounded like you were...
Oh, that's good.
You were talking about emotions on
lens number 1 says the lens of emotions, but is it different in the version?
It is, yeah, because that's the one I read out loud earlier,
Oh.
and it was called The Lens of Essential Experience.
Oh, that's like lens number 2. So he's added a lens. Interesting.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting.
Well, it doesn't matter.
In my book, lens number 2 is called The Lens of Surprise, and it's often referred to as surprise and delight. That's what I've heard it referred to in game dev videos and stuff. Or
It's
sorry, game
interesting.
design videos.
I think it's not even in this book. So he's removed that. Oh no,
Yeah,
it
or
is.
maybe
It's
he
lens
moved
number
it
4.
further back.
It's lens number 4 in this book. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
still talking
I mean,
about similar things, so. Oh,
but that was just what struck me, because essentially the lens that you were talking about, you were saying the lens.
oh, you're cutting out now.
Oh, sorry. Does it work?
Yeah, now I can hear
Testing.
you.
Okay, good. In first edition, it was called Lens of Essential Experience. But experience is basically emotion. It's like if you want to figure out what kind of experience, then yeah.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that he's changed that, but I think also we can learn because the second edition is basically what he learned between these two books. So I guess the emotion part is more brought up in the second edition. Whereas I don't-
Zeok says, I'm going off second edition too. So no big deal. I'll just ignore yarn. But the thing is, he has second edition. I'm the one with the first edition.
Exactly, it's the other way around. I have the second edition.
Yeah. I have the old bad book, apparently. No, it's not bad. I would say that all of the stuff that's in this book, it still applies today. But as with everything, things change and some things become more important. And that's why they changed the order of it and added more stuff to it.
Yeah.
Right now, there's sort of a discussion going on in chat about how people learn and how different people learn better. As a teacher, I can only say absolutely yes. I mean, there's been loads of studies to support that there are at least 5 different ways for human beings to learn, and some people just learn better. Some people are good at reading in silence. Some people learn better by hearing audio. Some people prefer playing a game like throwing balls and being physical. Some people learn better by taking things apart, etc., etc. So definitely check out different learning methods. Maybe you actually learn a lot better in a way that you've never actually tried before, and that can be a huge game changer.
Yeah, I think learning methods is actually kind of interesting that they don't usually cover in school, teaching students different methods of learning where they could then try out themselves and then choose the one that works for them.
Yeah. I think it's a matter of time. Eventually, I think teachers they'll be more comfortable to try to move outside of their box, because teachers have a tendency to do things the same way until they become computer science teachers, in which case, you're screwed, because literally every 3 months you need to revise your study.
I think the
Material.
teachers still don't revise, and then they just talk about things that are 10 years old a lot of the time, sadly enough. But I understand it's hard to keep up with times in that science. I really like this part where there's really good... we discussed defeating Heisenberg, or the paralysis by analysis. And I want to mention here, he has a good tip. Like he discusses first that it's hard to play a game and analyze it at the same time. Usually you either ruin the experience or become really bad at it, or then you're not really analyzing it at the time. And for example, one tip he has here is analyzing memories. They're not as perfect as you go, but analyzing memories is much easier, because then you can fully enjoy the game, and then instantly after the game you analyze it. And also that doesn't ruin the game for you, because actually this is a thing that a lot of game designers go through in their career, is that basically most games are ruined for them because they start treating it as a job, which means that they start only analyzing them. and that's the only mode they're in. And then they can't enjoy it anymore because once your brain is doing two things, it's super hard to kind of, switch one part off or only do a little of the other part. He even discusses that, like the sneak glances kind of. And that's what I do when I give feedback on Tuesdays, is that you play the game, try to experience it fully, and then you're fully immersed, try to be as much as you can, and then you have these small glances where you try to analyze and kind of have this critical thinking. I still suck at the game though.
Yeah.
But
that is what I mean. There's like, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 different methods or so described in the book about how to do it. I do feel though that he could have gone a little bit more in depth. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I feel that he could have gone
in the
a bit
second
more
chapter,
in
are you
depth.
sure?
In my book, yeah. I know it's kind of contradicting what I said earlier, but it's just like at some point it talks about kind of reaching a zen-like state where you can analyze your gameplay experience while you're playing it without ruining it, and it's like it kind of becomes magic in the book. And I was like, okay, so do you have links to where I can learn this magical zen-like thing? Because I think everyone here has
Tasty.
probably had
Grab
that
a
experience.
grab a rock, go to a mountain, stare at the rock for 1 year, try to become the rock. Once you are the rock, you will find the zen inside of your chest. It's just below the heart, right here. Sorry.
That actually reminds me a bit of how I learned to meditate once.
You went to a mountain with a rock?
No, I didn't. But basically, I was told to think of my breathing as a crazy monkey, and that I need to think of how this monkey should control the breathing. So the thought process is basically to focus on the breathing without focusing on controlling the breathing. And that is very meta. But with practice, that is actually a way to kind of attain a form of relaxation.
I
And
think
that
that's
is
similar.
basically meditation.
Well, it's the same thing with this, I think. That's why he uses the word zen, I guess.
Yeah. And as Legend Studio says, it does get pretty cheesy and deep. And then he says there's like 20 definitions of fun. If I recall correctly, I think it was Legend Studio who said that, and now this was like 4 or 5 streams ago or something. He said that he tried to read the book, but he couldn't finish it because the author was so full of himself. And sometimes I get that feeling, but I kind of think, okay, but this is just how I feel about it right now, and it may be like that because, I mean, I guess so many other people are saying it's good, and I'm not talking about the Emperor's New Clothes here. I do know that, just because everyone says McDonald's burgers are great, that doesn't make them great burgers and all, but I feel that this book is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh, Legend Studio says it wasn't me, but I wasn't able to Turner. And I agree in some cases. I mean, it was hard for me to get through the first 2 chapters, but I felt like once I got past that, it became a lot more interesting to me to read. But I think it's because in some ways I really did not care about his past or his intros and all of that. I recognize that he is a super talented author and a super talented game designer with a lot of experience. But my ego was like, whatever. I just like, I want to make games, and can I get like to the cool stuff?
Yeah. I think the thing is with this, any kind of book, not just this book, especially in game design, is that if you have never made a game or even attempted to make like several games, most of these books will be meaningless for you. It's going to be very boring, and it's going to be hard to go through because it has no application. You might have a hard time even understand how you could apply it. Like, how do I take this and now make a game out of this? Look at emotion. Well, I don't know. I feel sad now. I don't know where I'm going to go with this. Pizza is just bad. I don't know. The thing is, once you actually have some experience, so doing game jams and those kind of things, instantly, for example, this like the lens of emotion for me, which is not in Tasty's book is not present, but like looking at like, okay, what is for example, in my own game, I'm making a witch game. Like, is she sad or happy, or what kind of like emotion am I trying to like? I'm making happy colors into like. Is this a happy game, or so it's starting to apply questions which I can then apply, and sometimes I have the answer, sometimes I don't, and that's where it becomes useful when you actually have a concrete thing to apply it to.
Hey, Cobble Generator. Welcome to Book Club. Good to see you.
There's one thing there's a couple things still I want to at least mention. I don't know if this is. Do you have Peril 2 in your book? It says, "What is true of my experience may not be true for others," and it actually kind of answers some questions we have had here in chat. Like,
yes, it talks about introspection, and then it talks about the perils, and there's a first and a second peril.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
So this second peril is what is true of my experiences, and he discusses here that there's usually, two kind of designers. One that says I only design for people like me. So people like I want to make games I like, and then I hope there's other people like them. And then the other one that's more like, I'm just gonna make something and then target a market and leave all the decisions to play testing and that kind of thing. And here he discussed kind of the problems with both of the aspects. So I only design for people like me. Kind of, he discusses game designers tend to have unusual tastes. There may not be enough people like you out there to make your game a worthwhile investment. So if you have usually we game designers, we are usually hardcore gamers too. Like, we like to play a lot of games. And that's why we usually develop some kind of interesting taste, and that taste might not be like, there might or might not be more people like that. And then of course the question is, how many games can you make in that genre? That's a peril. It's not necessarily true. Like, you can still do it that way, but you won't. And then the next one is you won't be designing or developing alone. If a different team member has different ideas about what is best, they can be hard to resolve. So once you have a very strong kind of opinion about something, because you're just designing for yourself, then if there's even a slight disconnect in the team, it can lead to bigger problems.
Definitely.
Then there are many kinds of games and audience that will be completely off limits to you. So if you only know how to design for yourself, if someone asks or you need to design something who's not you, you might struggle a lot. I don't know. You have these same points in the first edition?
Yeah, I do. I think. I mean, the way that it's listed here is that it starts out talking about introspection, and it talks about how this is one of these not quite so scientific ways of doing game design. I mean, scientists don't do introspection, and it kind of talks about the first peril, which is introspection can lead to false conclusions about reality, and it gives some pretty interesting examples. It talks about Socrates. I don't know how to pronounce it in English, but I'll call him Socrates. It talks about how he has an interesting observation about how when people learn something new, this is an introspection. When they learn something new, it feels like this is something that we already knew but are now remembering. So what he does, like Socrates kind of takes it one step further and says, this must mean that our memory, that whenever we learn something, we are actually rediscovering memories from a previous life. And then all of a sudden that becomes his theory or so. And it's like, that's when that's one of the perils of introspection. It's that if you look at yourself and you kind of base your reality on how you feel about something, then there is a danger of you seeing the world for something that it is not. Zydab says that blue-haired girl is distracting me. Is that happening to someone else too? It's a night elf. It's a night elf. She shouldn't be distracting.
Oh, thanks for the sub, Pascrew. We'll dance for you after the stream. And anybody else subbing, we'll try to. I will go through all the follows and all the subs. All the support is much appreciated.
And Tukak brings up a really important point as well. It's related to this about the introspection. He says people doing research also often try to see what they want to see with the results to skew them in their favor, and that is where research becomes unscientific, because you cannot skew the results. If you're supposed to be a scientist and write a report about something, then that experience needs to be reproducible. And that's also discussed in the book, particularly in the psychology section, where they talk about behaviorism psychology, and I forgot the name of the other one, so I'm going to have to look it up. Or not.
But
it doesn't matter what the other name is. You can read the book. But there are basically two types, where one talks about behaviors and how that relates to experiences, and the other talks about how people perceive things. And that is very much different. You know, your personal perception of things might not be how the real world sees things or how the real world really is. And that's why it's a peril. Sorry for that long-winded talk about peril.
No, it's good. It's good because we also go through some of the things that he kind of. This doesn't just jump into these topics. There's a lot of like pre-word or like things he discusses to come to the perils. And I think also he does mention there also, like, in game design, we have the luxury that this, like, we should look at sciences, but this is not science. That, you know, if you wanted to make things work in non-realistic manner, we can. But there's always different perils because people still have certain expectations. But then the second part of the whole, you know, what is true of my experience peril is that personal opinions can't be trusted. Has these, you know, problems. You can't leave every decision to playtesting, especially early in the process when there is no game yet to playtest. At this point, someone has to exert a personal opinion about what is good and bad. So, for example, what I do, like in my testing on Tuesdays, is like, that game's not ready. So I also have to scale then the feedback towards that. But if you're not kind of experienced in doing that, it becomes very subjective, where they can kind of latch on to something like, oh, the graphics looks crap, whereas the game designer knows already that the graphics are not done or where he wanted to be, and it's kind of not. He wanted maybe have more feedback on the actual gameplay, for example. Yeah, and then there's other things here too, but they're kind of around the play testing. Let's see here. So your second lens, by the way, is the lens of essential experience. That's your first one, right?
Yes, that was my the first one for me is the lens of experience, and then there are no more lenses for me until chapter 3.
Yeah, same here. See, there's some. Realize your bias is stubborn and learn to suppress it, not to let it take over. Well, it's kind of like, I feel like you can either have one of two problems. One is that you're very stubborn and you kind of just see it from your own perspective and it's hard to listen to somebody. Or then you have the other opposite thing where anything anybody says kind of leads you around, and, you know, you become, actually, you kind of lose confidence in yourself, and then you start listening to yourself. And these are basically like and most game designers usually tend to have one or the other at some point of their career. I think the biggest thing is to know that once you hit crisis, or crisis in, especially when it comes to kind of like, which was already mentioned, what is it called? Imposter syndrome, which a lot of game designers have, because it's hard because it's not a science. So it's like, I don't know anything. What am I to say that this game is good? When you reach to these kind of crises, I think it's important to know that you're not alone. It is normal, and it's not part of becoming a game designer necessarily, but it's also a part of becoming a game designer. You're starting to realize that there's so much you don't know, and that's usually happens when you become an expert. Like when you are not an expert in something, things seem simple. They're simplistic and not complex, and that's because you don't understand the whole picture usually. And this is more a general rule, like in programming or in anything you would study. When you're, I don't want to say ignorant, when you don't understand something fully, it seems simple. Once you start understanding something more fully, you actually understand that it's so complex that you will maybe never grasp it or know it fully. And then you get this can get this crisis of like, who am I to say, like, I made 6 blockbuster games, but still, who am I to say if my next game is going to be good? These publishers say it's crap, my next game. Oh, I guess it's crap. And then they lose faith in themselves.
Yeah. And they also they do talk about this, or the author talks about this a little bit during the beginning of the book. That's part of that pep talk section where he says that, everyone has feelings of inadequacies, where you don't feel that you're fit for what it is that you're doing. And that's kind of what he tries to eliminate by saying, repeat this mantra, I'm a game designer, just keep on working, because first time you make a game, you'll probably thinking, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. See, I caught that one. Way. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. It's like, how do I do this game design? And then you make a game and it becomes maybe a little bit popular and you need to make game number 2. And you're thinking, maybe I was just lucky on that other one. Or, maybe things aren't going to be as easy this time around. And then you make a new game and things work out and you're going to make your third game and you're like, things have changed. I've made games for 10 years now, but what if I didn't keep up with yada, yada, yada? So again, that comes back to the introspection, like look at yourself and look at how your experiences have been with these things and take the best of it. Don't pull yourself down, because everyone does it. You've heard of artists that are like, look, I painted this Picasso. It's a crap. And everyone looks at it and they're like, are you kidding me? It looks awesome. And, every creative person will go through that. You just need to ignore it and be like, eh.
I think in chapter 1, he says something that kind of reflects that, which I like. Well, I even wrote it down, which is, if you aren't failing, you aren't trying hard enough.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like why I always, like what everybody, not just me, everybody in the game industry is like, go do game jams, go do game jams, go do them, do them. And everybody's like, well, what is this trend? Why is everybody so obsessed about these? It's because your first 10 games, there's exceptions again, but usually the first 10 games are not going to be the greatest games. Most probably because, you're not experienced yet. And as you gain experience, your games are just going to get better. And getting them out of your way is super important. So just failing, and even professional people fail. They just fail kind of behind the scenes, right? Usually. There's not that many yet that stream their whole game design process. And, when they made, like the Blizzard even failed on that one big MMO game that they cut off all full together. I don't remember what the name was. Something Titan something? What was it? I don't know if you, Tasty, know more about it. But
there's not a whole lot of info on it. But yeah, it was called Project Titan, and it was supposed to be an MMO, says some people. What we got in the end was Overwatch, and I think that was a good thing because the world is kind of moving a bit away from MMORPGs.
But yeah,
they were also once trying to make a point-and-click adventure with Thrall as the lead character. That didn't turn out as so well either.
Yeah, and I think, or I know that there even the one of like the Supercell people who make a lot of the big mobile games, they had a whole presentation called how they're serial killers, not of humans but of games. So they said that they kill about 4 games per one released. So about for every 5th game it just gets released. So,
and I think it's a good thing when people do that. I mean, it's really important to kill your darlings when you're a game designer or a game developer, for that matter. Not every idea that you get is great, and even if it's a great idea, maybe your execution is bad, or maybe the timing is bad. Maybe you're just not at a place in your life where you are ready to do that particular thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
There was a couple of things still that was. I really like, by the way, in the lens of experience, where you kind of look at what kind of experience you want to create. When I don't know if in your book, but he kind of discusses the whole kind of, for example, like let's say you want the person to have the experience of being in a cold environment. There's no
Yeah.
way he can actually make the air cold around the player, but for example, adding those small like where there's like a mist,
Wind howling.
wind howling and the cold mist coming out of the character's breath. That's all kind of like, if you ever been in a cold environment, you'll instantly, your brain is gonna kind of supplement, and suddenly you're freezing even if there's nothing actually cold in the room. And I think that's very important to kind of look at. And something I'm gonna look at in my game even is like the environment of my character. Where is she? What is she doing? What is she going through? What can I do to supplement or add on that experience to make it more, visceral or more, strong. So it kind of invokes those emotions in people, which was the first lens.
Real Supercrew has an interesting quote. He says a famous quote goes, "Make a great game or kill it early." And he follows up with, "I should have listened to that one, Kappa."
Yeah, I only make great
think
games,
we've
and I
all been
always
there.
just kill them. No.
Yeah. I make bad games and I kill them late.
But I think it's very important. Even when I attended university, they started off the whole university year. We're saying like, "Welcome. This is a place where you can fail. So feel free to, for the next 4 years, to just fail here." And I think that's important, to kind of allow yourself this safe environment to fail, no matter if you're school or later on, because that's what's required to learn and progress. Once you're not failing, if you're just having success, I tend to think that you're not learning anything. You don't really know why something was successful. Like if I want to make just a random game now and it was super successful, and I just happen to do everything right, that's cool. I mean, that's awesome. Who wouldn't want that? But at the same time, I wouldn't have learned anything. Someone comes up and asks like, "Björn, what was your secret?" I would be like, I press these buttons here, like that, and then the game came out, and you got it. You loved it. I mean, oh my God, they loved it. Oh yeah, it's very popular. Everybody's buying it. But I couldn't explain why. But when you fail, you're like, "Oh, I failed because I really didn't take this in consideration, or I didn't realize everybody, like, this is not something anybody likes." I don't know, like whatever you learn. I mean, I'm not bad examples right there, but
There's a lot of interesting points being made right now in the chat. I'm going to scroll up to Metathias. He says, Game Jam games to do with making games as YouTube videos have to do with making videos. There's just not enough time to make meaningful content in a 72-hour time limit. And to some extent, I agree with you, but then again, I don't, because that really depends on your definition of a game. A game really is very, very, very simple at its core, and that's what you see coming out in Game Jam games. You see people stripping away the visual experience sometimes. You see them stripping away the audio experience sometimes, and they kind of boil it down to the core experience of jumping, or the core experience of feeling that you have a limited resource, etc., etc. And I feel that a lot of really cool concepts can come out of Game Jam games. But I agree, you're not going to see a fantastic, fully fledged game in 72 hours unless someone invented a time machine.
maybe.
Which I have not.
But you can also scope interest. Like you might create that little seed that is then gonna grow, like Surgeon Simulator kind of did. Like they created that during Game Jam, the basic version, and then they saw, oh my god, this got a lot of hype, got a lot of interest from other people's, because again, in game jams you get other people to play them. It's kind of unique. Like early in the stream, Tasty said that when we were talking about the exercise, like, oh, but I don't have any friends. He was of course joking a bit, but like, I don't have any friends to play around with the exercises, and that's why I couldn't use it as much. And that's the thing with game jams. Suddenly you have a lot of friends, and you get a lot of feedback because you will play their games and they will play your games. So suddenly you're part of a community, and that's also very important.
Jams are a great way to network, and that is also one of the skills that's super necessary for a game designer, which is also listed in the book. Like there's this long list of economics and blah 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 blah, and you kind of need, as a game designer, to understand a little bit about all of those things, because if you're a game designer and you talk to your 3D modeler and say, couldn't you just do this, then you're basically being that annoying boss that you hate at your job, who tells you to do something even though he has no clue what you do and how you do it. So as a game designer, you really need to be the guy who knows a little bit about everything, but is also an expert at listening, which is like the core essential skill for a game designer.
Yeah, exactly. And I think here, Just Crash already said game jams are not about making a great game. Set a goal and complete something. And I think we discussed earlier with Tasty before the stream was a good discussion about like not finishing things actually can also become something where you learn. It can be a peril where you just never learn how to finish things. And game jams that have competitions, like Ludum Dare and other ones, I think are great because it kind of forces you to finish and put it out. So what is definition of finish? Might be this, that you somehow present it so other people can play and give you feedback. Put it on internet if it's digital. And I think that's very important to learn how to finish things. And that's why also most people will recommend to make very small games in the beginning, because it's easier to finish. And then you get the whole experience. It's a bit like, if you don't finish a game, it's a bit like you would watch only the first, half hour of a movie and you just keep watching that. So how you would be really great at starting something, like starting the story, but then you don't know about the whole arc of the story. I don't know if that's a good example.
Yeah, I mean, it's also sort of like a negative feedback loop, where, if you start a game and you get yourself hooked on the feeling, like you're basically feeding your brain drugs because you found a good idea for a game and now you're going to make it and you're working on it and you're doing all these awesome things and adding in features, and at some point you kind of run out of the drug. And if you keep doing that to yourself, stopping the project and starting a new project and feeding yourself more drugs, then again, mental drugs. Don't do drugs, kids. It's really bad, I've heard. You keep on doing this over and over, and eventually kind of desensitize your brain. And at some point, and we've seen it here in the game dev community, people burn out because it's like you never finish a game. You keep starting something new. And every time you start something new, it takes a shorter and shorter amount for you to burn out because you need the drugs. And then you start playing games because you get it from that as well. MMO players have been seeing this for God knows how many years. It's like they started playing, maybe they were called Tasty Graph, and they started playing Ultima Online or something in the late 90s, and then they went to another game, and 20 years later it's like, okay, I've played like 40 different MMOs, and they don't feel as awesome as they did back then. But there's no way in heck that I'm going to go back and play Ultima Online. Actually, I did, but I canceled my subscription about 2 years ago. But that was like after about 18 years of playing Ultima Online. I mean, that is that is mental. But most people who play MMOs, they just get desensitized. Most people who make games and cut and then switch to a new game are also going to get desensitized.
Yeah.
Welcome to Book Club, Janosch.
I think I want to touch upon he was said like even a small game takes a lot of time to make, and I do agree. But also I think it's because a lot of people's definition of a small game is totally wrong. A small game is something you can finish in 72 hours, not something you can't finish in 72 hours. So, for example, here we had an example like Owlboy took 9 years. Well, to begin with, Owlboy is not in any scale a small game, in my book at least. That's medium to a large game. So a game's not just not small because of its art or whatever it is. It's because it takes a little time to make. And then they usually tend to be something like, Flappy Bird or something more. That's probably a small game, which you could probably even finish in a day, depending on your skill level. So, so I do agree, but I also think it's because of this misconception of what is a small game. Maybe we should call micro games. Like we have micro games, we have tiny games, we have small games, and then I mean, and this might come from because most people and all game designers have played games and a lot of games. And the standard is kind of like, okay, AAA, 60 hours of gameplay. Then, of course, something that is 10 hours of gameplay is small. But from the point of view of a game developer or designer, that's still a big game. That 10 hours of gameplay could still take you years, like 9 years to make, depending on your team size. So measuring it how much gameplay content is maybe not the right way. It's more, again, about how much effort does it take to make that game.
Yeah, and cynically, it's also a measure of how much money do you have for this project. Most people can't make games without making money. Most people need to have money to do that. Unless I don't know, you're super rich or live with your parents and they don't have any expectations of you. Sorry, Mom, I'm still not famous. I will be someday, though, if you're watching.
Hi, Mom, look at me.
Yeah. My mom was actually one of my most dedicated testers. Like sometimes she would call me. She would literally call me at like 10 in the evening and tell me that I need to make a new update for my shooter game because and my mom is 60 plus years old, because she has now finished it. And she wrote down, like, it took me this amount of minutes to unlock the first power up. And then I played, and then it took me this amount of minutes to do this and that. Like, she was actually a really good tester. And my mom never played games. So that's where I started to use the parent test or the mom test. If my mom can play a game, then I did a good job.
Definitely. At least you'll have the user friendliness and the user experience correct.
Yeah.
All the flows, and which is super important. Which is kind of separate from even making the game sometimes. Like basically the tutorial, you could say. Especially when you have like I've had like when we made game in university, we had to put them on display, and then just anybody from the street would walk in, and we would have like just like your mom, like someone who's 65 or around that age, and they would come and it would be like a third person game, and you would just see them rotate on one spot or walk around in circles and not be able to use the mouse and the keyboard at the same time. But that's of course like that can be useful, but also remember that and then if you made a tutorial for that kind of person and had to teach them, you might create a crazy long tutorial. So know your audience again.
Oh yeah.
It would be awesome to make a game for like 70 plus or something.
Well, that's actually one of the points I wanted to make. It's like one of the things that I found that was really, really for making a new game, because I tend to make really small games, but like small and simple games. And one of the things I found was that if I envision a specific person, like I want to make a game that my mom finds funny, but also I find funny, or my girlfriend, or my immediate circle of friends, if I make a game that all of those people find funny or entertaining, then odds are it's going to be entertaining for the majority of people in the world, because let's face it, there are more non-gamers than gamers there, and there are a lot of gamers. If you can get it to work for both sides, then it's good. But the real point I was going to make is that when I look at a specific person and try to make something for them, then I find that I put a lot more dedication into it. Again, it comes back to that thing about being an artist or being a whatever creative person, and you're thinking, I'm not worthy or I'm not great at this. But if you are trying to make something for someone else, then all of a sudden it's like you get a lot better, and you kind of push those doubts away, because when you show them the first test version, or when you show them like pictures of it and they're like, "Oh, this looks interesting, I would like to play this," and they genuinely mean it because you're making something for them, that is a lot of motivation. Motivation is important, because I mean, you'll burn out passion and motivation along the way, so you need to have that, as well as that feeling of not letting people down, because a lot of people here probably recognize that they can let themselves down, but you don't really want to let other people down. So that is another method of trying to push yourself to finish what you started.
Yeah, and I think even what you discussed touched upon what he also discussed in the book, which is the secret of the gifted. Like, a lot of people see like, oh, there's some very talented people, and then there's like not talent, or might feel like you don't have talent. And actually, he in the book calls talent, or like initial talent, just a minor gift. So you have a minor gift in something, and then he goes on to say like the major gift is when you love what you do and to make games, and that's the bigger thing, because that's gonna push you through also the hard times and when you are failing and struggling, which I think you also do, which is kind of what you touched upon also. Let's see here.
We should probably look through some of the questions as well from the viewers, because I see that there are a lot. One of them, Side App, please talk about how to design puzzle platformers, what kind of experience one should create for such games. And I think it's a great question, but I feel that even if I could, I can't really answer that question. But even if I could, it would be something that we could research it for the future and then do like a video segment on it. But it's not something that I would be able to answer right now. I've made some puzzles for some of my own games. Some of them were crap and some of them were worse than that. I've also made good puzzles, but it's one of these things that I can't give you an answer now, and I think it would be a long one.
I think also that there is no set way. There's no like, now take X and put Y here and you'll get this out and this will be amazing. There's several different ways. Looking at like like there's actually a lot of like, that's the thing, you should look at many different people and how they make games. GDC has a lot of good talks with different designers who explain how they do any kind of design, especially puzzle the design. But I feel like, and he even touched in the book, like there is no like specific method. You might build your own, but that doesn't mean that's the only one. A lot of the time, the only thing I can recommend right now is like look into, like, go watch those GDC talks. There's a lot of good content there. They can probably answer that much more in depth. But also know that when they answer, they just talk from their own perspective, their way of doing it. And you should look at several, and then you might find the way you want to make it.
Yeah.
And you might find out your own way. A lot of people do. Like they find their totally own way to create puzzles or to create any kind of level design. See, is there any other questions?
I like what Tukard is saying. He says, two main things that keep me going playing my game, two, positive feedback from people. And and that is one of those things that drive you. It's not the only thing that will make you continue working, because at some point you might be working on bug fixing, or you'll have like a 2-month period of making AI, like Wobbly Trout, another streamer. He's been spending something like 3 months on making AI, and he basically has a bot that beats the crap out of me. But then again, I was really bad at the game. But he's making a good bot, and it took a long time. That is not something that gives you a lot of great feedback. It doesn't make you feel good, and particularly not when the bot kicks your butt, or maybe it does, because then you did a good job. But what I'm saying is, and Bjorn has mentioned this a lot, there's going to be periods of time where it just sucks to make this game, and you're not getting any feedback, and you just want to say, screw this, I'm making an incremental clicker. And that's dope. It sucks. And that's when you need to carry on, even though it sometimes just sucks. Or take a little break and then continue.
Join it. I think a lot of time, that's why I really like the Twitch game dev section, is because once you have those hard times, you can come here and you can talk about it. And then you can instantly, we're all brothers or sisters, so we'll all be like, yeah, I went through the exact, amen, like that's so hard. And then you get kind of this discussion and the support from the community, which is hard to find anywhere else on the internet, because here you have this live connection where you can talk about stuff. Douchey Rock is saying, can we also talk in future stream about gamification? I don't know if you guys know, Yu Kai Cho has a great book about it. Definitely. Right now we're going through the art of game design, but we'll definitely cover different books. We're now trying, I guess, with about 2 chapters every week, but we can speed it up if we notice that there's, time, or there's not, like, if we can read it faster. But we'll definitely cover different types of themes and books.
And especially gamification, because it's really something that's applicable not only as a game designer, but you can use this in so many other situations. Like, I use it in my everyday teaching. Something as simple as having a progress bar on your assignments. Like, you have 4 pieces of paper and there's a progress bar at the top that kind of shows the students how far along they are with a percentage. That's a form of gamification. And was there a car in the back?
Yeah, I'm driving off now. So see you
Okay.
guys. No.
Sorry. I just got distracted and I was like, is my cat farting, or is it maybe me? Oh, good. Yeah, but gamification is super important, and more teachers are realizing this, and more regular companies are realizing that. At some point we'll probably have toothbrushes with built-in, well, we have them already now, like timers, and we'll probably have toothbrushes that give you achievements whenever you do stuff. It's the future, and I would very much love to talk about that at some point.
Yeah, definitely. It's something I'm very passionate, because I also I work in education, or like edutainment, I guess, sector, and as my day job. So it's definitely something that's also present there. And it's gonna grow, and it's just gonna become bigger part of everything. Then Janosh says, in your experience as game makers, do you enjoy working on your own or with others more? If I go first, I guess. I do enjoy doing both for different reasons. I would have to say, if I had to pick forever work alone or forever work with other people, never alone, I would always pick work with other people, because once you meet like very talented individuals, they can just bring such incredible things to your game. So like I, of course, in the current game I'm making alone, but that also there's a lot of things that I noticed that, I'm wanting, like I'm not the best at. and that definitely makes it still nice. It's still interesting because I can push myself, I can learn things, and I can level up on those sectors. But it also is such a great feeling working with a, super talented artist, and you're just like, I want a house, and then you'll have a palace the next day, or working with great designers because you can then have a discussion about things. Whereas working alone, well, I kind of work not alone because I work kind of with Twitch chat anyway, but you can have very interesting dialogues and things with other people, which makes it kind of, those hard times are easier because you kind of go through them together versus alone. Tasty, you want to answer too?
Yeah, I've tried working in teams. I've tried working in duos. I've done most of my stuff alone. Uh, and I look at it this way. I love working alone because I love working and learning. It's not uncommon for me to go to work and then come back from work and then study or program or draw or paint or read for hours. Like we're talking 6 to 10 hours, to the point where it's not healthy. You can't really expect other people to do that, and that's one of the things on, again, as a game designer, introspection. You need to look at yourself and kind of figure out, is there something I could do different to work better in teams? And lately it's become better. I've done some art for other projects, and I really would like to do more teamwork because for me, I'm kind of competitive, and I like when other people are better at things than I am. I like, in a way, to be the underdog and need to struggle for it. In a way, it's kind of the same here. I know I don't come off as that, but I don't have a formal education. Um, I didn't go to university, and I don't work professionally as a game designer, but I've enjoyed reading the books. I've enjoyed watching talks, and I like making games. I like designing games in particular. I've made some board games and some paper games. Sorry, card games. So yeah, I would definitely love to work with in a team so that I can learn from other people and share my experiences. And I think most importantly, to get a kind of professional feedback on things that I think I know or things that I am unsure of. And that's where I think working in a team can be really good because you can kind of spar with your teammates. You can learn things, get experiences from them. And before we move on, Adam, do you have more to say about the particular question, the teamwork thing?
No, I think.
Okay, so I'm just going to scroll back up. Zydab says, how to identify experiences felt while playing a game. And that's actually a really, really good question. It's very vague, but it's also precisely one of the things that the book talks about in chapter 2, where it talks about the essential experience. And that leads us back kind of to that sort of the Zen thing where I said, you're playing a game, but at the same time, you're observing yourself playing the game, but at the same time, you're not paralyzes by analysis on yourself. How do you do that? I couldn't tell you because I'm not there. I can't. I'm still guilty of consciously analyzing what I do while I do it. I've always been like that. But this is something that takes practice, and the book says it as well. So we practice, and eventually we get it, hopefully.
Well, there's the different ways, right? Like the one where where you need a lot of practice, the one where you try to do both at the same time. Then there's the way of, play the game, don't worry about it, but instantly after you finish the game, you have a diary and you write down what did you feel and why did you feel it. Why is very important. Don't write like I felt like this is a bad game. That doesn't mean anything. You need to write down like, okay, it made me feel really sad because they killed my favorite character. And then why did they do that? Well, they probably did that to invoke those feelings so that they can do something else later or whatever. And then there's the other thing is, of course, I would also like to add that there is the skill of looking at other people playing So if Tasty here was now playing something, I would probably not only listen to what he says, like in the book they use an example where they say like, okay, if Tasty would come here and he would say like, I would ask him like, how are you, Tasty? And then he would answer like, well, I'm fine, I guess, or something like that, or I'm fine, just I'm fine, or he would be like, yeah, I'm fine, like. Those come off as different depending on how you what is your body language, what do you say, how do you say it. And that's the same thing when someone plays a game. There's a big difference between someone outright laughing and like really enjoying it versus someone just being like, even if usually you don't have a lot of expressions. Another tip, by the way, if you do play testing, is to if you invite somebody over to play, to tell them to vocalize everything they experience and do and why they're doing it. So like talk out what you're trying to do. That really helps you understand what's going on. Like you might also like misunderstand that they're trying to click something, but they might be trying to find something totally different. Level up.
Yeah, sorry. That was just Crash all.
Oh, it cut out.
Oh, okay.
Say that again.
Let me try again. Sorry, that was just Crash already. He says, "Tasty Graph, did you ever read Level Up by Scott Rogers?" And I did. Let me see if I can. Oh, God. I need help.
I would say that's probably the next book we're gonna cover. I would guess. After we're finished with this one.
Let me just read up on the chat real quick.
Yep. By the way, hi everybody, Tim Bidet, Meta, Diver, everybody. I'm sorry if we haven't said hi to you guys.
Yes.
We're definitely
Hello,
reading,
everyone.
though.
And welcome to Book Club.
Yeah. But that's basically the first 2 chapters. And for next week, should we try to cover 2 more chapters? So 3 and 4. You think that's reasonable?
Let's see. How long are they? That should be doable. It's about 20 pages. That's not even, is it? But I think it's good that I don't know. I guess we could also talk to people, to viewers here, and kind of get a feel for, did we spend too much time on the 2 chapters? Because we did go a little bit outside of what the chapters were talking about, but it kind of related to it.
No, that's a good idea. Like, how do you guys think? Like, do you want more in-depth or less in-depth? We want us to go through faster pace, or it'll take some time. We have like a 6 months delay on this stream, so. And for you, it's like 7 months because you're seeing it.
You can write a little letter, put in envelope, and you mail to us. We will read it later.
I really want that though.
Like a mailbox, and then you open the mailbox. And
I have a mailbox actually, and it's I think it's in Netherlands. It's a forwarding service.
That would be kind of cool. So like, hey, welcome to stream, and then you open the envelope, and there's like a pair of panties from Janosh, and Anthrax from Javasaurus, and it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, sorry, Janosh. We're now covered all the things here. Not all of it, of course. So if you want more in-depth, definitely I recommend getting this book. You can the link is below. It does go more in-depth. We covered the core concepts and discussions that the book in the first 2 chapters talks about. Pre-internet days, yeah. That's actually a kind of interesting thing. Like if you're looking to find a job, no matter what field, you send a handwritten letter to somebody. Hello, I'm a game designer.
You do? I mean, I see a lot of people. I mean, I guess it's true because a lot of people show up in person and then they deliver a piece of paper with their application and there's CV and all of those things.
Well, if you can.
But I know a lot of people who also, my girlfriend was recently looking, she has one now, yay. But she would send out emails to a bunch of different companies, looking for a job position. So that wasn't like a handwritten thing. So I'm kind of
No,
curious.
no.
What do you guys do?
No, you don't have
Handwritten
to
or?
do. Usually you just send in a digital form or by email contact somebody. Why I think it's interesting is because usually you kind of pique the interviewees or interviewers' interest because they're like, you don't get handwritten letters every day, so they will definitely read it. Versus, if you send an email, they might get 1,000 emails every day. Maybe not 1,000, but 10 or 20, so you might not get as much attention. But
Yeah, Janusz says you have to be a very special stream to get panties from him. And then he also says he shows up in person. I'm assuming the show up in person is for the job interview.
no, you should
Could be he shows up to deliver panties. We don't know. We don't know what people do with those things. I should never have mentioned it.
write a letter by hand, scan it, and send a picture of it via email.
Yeah. And Zydab says he gets mailed some paper mail for government job interviews. And Devious Oatmeal says he writes a letter by hand, scans it, sends a picture. Oh, that's what you read. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Zeox says, I'll always invite prospective employers out to a nice dinner first. Then when the bill comes, tell them I can't pay unless they hire me. That sounds like a really solid plan, Zeox. How does that work? Like, do you get the job?
No, he gets the job as the dishwasher every day. But he doesn't earn any money because he just has to pay his dinner bills. Which kind of works out if you just have free housing, too.
Good evening, Core. Welcome to the end of book club.
The end of books.
Yeah, we're kind of done with book club. Kind of. Now we're just rambling.
I'm
just waiting for Bjorn to click the button and kill me off the stream.
Disconnect.
Then he'll do... What are you doing today? Art stream?
So today, is art stream. We're going to do the post challenge today. And we might be drawing hands today. It was a good suggestion. So we're gonna be looking for different hand poses and draw them because that's something.
Let's see if I can help a little bit with that.
Oh, I don't have a screenshotting tool.
Oh, let's see here.
I need
to. I kind of delayed on the stream, so it's a little hard for me to see. But like, here's my hand. Basically, you look at it like a square when you're drawing it. This is a square. And then you kind of have a triangle here. Triangle on top of the square. Then you have a little sausage that kind of comes out of the side here.
Yeah, a sausage. That's how you need to.
Sausage here, sausage here, and sausage here. And if you look at the hand at the top, it goes kind of like that. And this is really a good way to draw hands for beginners. Like, make a box, then a triangle on top of it, and then little sausages. And all of a sudden you'll be like, hey, it's kind of easy to draw these hands.
What kind of sausages, though? Is it like a German sausage?
It's these kinds of... It's Danish sausages, also known as pølsefinger.
Oh, pølsefinger, yeah.
Yeah, sausage fingers.
Sausage.
Hey, babe. Ooh! I might not be able to...
Oh, she's bringing them to me.
You need to move them in a bit further.
No! I thought she was bringing them... Oh, there we go. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Eating challenge. Eat them all at once.
Sorry. That was girlfriend.
I'm getting hungry now.
He made pancakes. Yes, it's not very nice.
Too.
No, I'm not really sure how long I'll be staying. Probably not on camera because I don't want to steal the show. Really, I just want to eat pancakes. I'll be all like.
You need to make a full written report of how awesome those pancakes were.
I will analyze the experience of the pancakes.
Yeah, please look it through lens number 1 and number 2 and tell us what you experienced.
I will. I haven't gotten to lens number 2 though, because that's in chapter 3. But I'll try.
That's scary.
Okay, you guys can't see that. Bjorn,
Please. It ruined a good pancake. I'm offended.
That's my girlfriend. She's basically just ate 2 holes in a pancake and pretending to be Leatherface or something. Now do you believe me that my girlfriend is the one that got the statue behind me and
No.
not me?
No, you're just a master puppeteer. You're just like that's what she thinks too. That she decided to know. It can't be. It doesn't exist. Put on the Night Elf. Yeah, next book club we'll have the Night Elf instead of Tasty. Right.
Is it hot in here?
Yeah, you're gonna get in trouble. So I think the 2 next chapters is good. So if you guys have this book and you want to follow along, read chapter 3 and 4, and we'll probably get some feedback until the next stream. People watch the VOD and stuff like that, and then we can change the pace as we get feedback. So don't be afraid to tell like if you're going too deep or too shallow. If you want to know, and we can even go back to a chapter if there's something like, hey, I didn't really understand this part. Then we can go back and kind of discuss it. I got to read chapter 1 to 4 now. Yeah, jeez. Homework from watching. Exactly. It's your homework, guys. Look those up. They're actually not that, like, thick. They actually cover a lot of subjects, but it's a lot of text, don't get me wrong. But it's not like...
And don't worry, later in the book, there's going to be a lot more pictures. My theory is that he was kind of burning out, and he thought, let's put in pictures to fill out the remaining half of the book. But yeah, thank you very, very, very much, Mr. J Gaming. He says thanks for the book club. Big love. Gonna shower, then stream. Stay classy, people. Thank you so much. And yes, we will try to stay classy.
We're always classy.
That's what I do. Yeah, I'm so classy.
That's how the cookie crumbles.
Zydeb says, I wish they had an audio version. Can anyone do an audio version?
Oh, of this? Like read it out
That wouldn't
loud?
really, I mean, it would be nice with an audio version because that is one of the 5 methods of learning. I mean, some people just learn better by having an audiobook. If it was legal, I would be okay reading this book out loud, but it's really not legal to just record a book and then distribute it. So that's not going to happen.
Yeah, they would have to talk.
Zeok says it is legal because he got permission, but still, if I were to read, let's see, about 489 pages, that would take like 3 hours.
Yeah.
Times a lot. I don't know how long that would take, but it's not really feasible.
No. And there's of course things that in these books that refer to the pictures. There is picture. There is a picture right there. Look. And then there's a wall of text next to it.
Mr. J Hawken, Mr. J Gaming says we could always ask Stephen Hawking. But that would be like the lens of existential experience. I can't even do that.
No, nobody can do Stephen like Stephen.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming that it's like some
humor,
sort of
dude.
software that everyone could download.
Oh yeah, that is. But his humor, to be truly Stephen Hawking.
That's true. We can't do that.
We should.
I'm still working on my Morgan Freeman loud like Morgan Freeman, but it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't. As most people will notice, I'm not much of a voice actor. I can do Mickey Mouse, and that's it. And even
you can do
like he's
Tex
drunk.
and Mickey Mouse, and I can do. I guess if we're in the vein of Disney, I could do either Goofy or Stitch from Lilo and Stitch.
Hey, see you later, Mr. J Gaming. Have a good stream. Let's see here. Is there anything else we need to... Well, we'll take a short break, and we'll be back with some art, some drawing. I have to reset the cam to get the ball cam up again, so we'll be back to that. And remember, guys, next Sunday we're going to continue. So if you want the whole book, you need to join us again on Sunday. There's gonna be a VOD, but I can't promise when it's gonna be out. I'll edit it as fast as possible. It's actually interesting, the difference in cover. So yeah, see you say next Sunday, guys. Or Tasty, see you next Sunday, actually.
Yes, I'm going to pop into chat while I eat my pancakes.
And
I had a lot of fun with book club, and I'm really looking forward to doing it next time. In the meantime, I'll see if I can do some streaming on my own channel, which is going to be art. Sorry for the plug. I'm allowed to do that.
Do a plug. Please tell us all the handles that we need to know. We should also
All
do
the handles.
Yeah, like
my
at
username?
tastygraph.tv, Tastygraph TV on Twitter and all that.
Oh yeah. If you want to follow me on Twitter, that's Tastygraph TV on Twitter. I usually don't tweet as much. It's mostly like if I see something interesting or if I have an update on my game. I'm working on a 3D Diablo-like game where you make your own skills. I'm a new programmer, so I bounce my ideas off of everyone all the time. And I'm Tastygraph here on Twitch. Some of you know me and some of you don't know me, but you've heard about me. Now you've seen me. And I promise to shave next time. I did mean to shave, but I didn't manage today. So
Never shave.
this
want
is
you to
like
grow
probably
like-
the last time you see me looking like in a weekend. Side up, no, I'm not making Albion Online. I am playing Albion Online. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Thanks for being part of the book club. You guys made this a ton more entertaining than the book and Bjorn and I could ever have done. So thank you for being part of this. Yes. And I think, should I just press leave call now, Bjorn?
Yeah, just press it and I'll switch to the program view and then.
Alrighty,
There we go.
I'll do that. I'll see you guys in the chat. Stay cool.
There we go. Thank you, Tasty. It's awesome to have you, and I'm excited already to read the next chapters. Maybe on Thursday, I can see if I can somehow use some of the new games information from the book in my game. Maybe look at it from the which perspective even. But the book goes to the side now, and we're gonna have a short break so I can set up for drawing because I need my tablet, I need all of that, and I need to go to the toilet fast. So we will be back in about 5 minutes. And we'll do some drawing per usual. And remember, guys, if you're new here, on Tuesdays we do game feedback and Steam research. So game feedback, you can submit your game. Any game, doesn't need to be out yet. It can be a prototype. I give you constructive feedback, not a review. I'm not trying to make fun of the game. I'm trying to help you develop it, and you can also treat it as playtesting. Then we do Steam research. We look at the top trending games. We follow along the trends, see what is popular, what sells well, what doesn't, what kind of trailers they make, so that we can learn from their marketing material. Then on Thursday, we make a game. So we're right now working in Game Maker. We're making a game called Which, which is a falling game platformer with twin stick shooting. And Sundays, we have the Game Design Book Club that you just viewed. And the next, remember, chapter 3 and 4 for next week. And then we have the art, which is after this. So I'll take a short break, set up the next stream. So please hang around.